Dear friends, welcome back to Data Analytics Talks. In today's talk, I would like to introduce you one of the most popular open source relational database. Remember, open source relational database. It's also a open source object relational database. You may ask Biju, why are you talking about open source? We have SQL Server, we have Oracle. So why do you talk about open source? Yeah, there is a reason for that. So if you can guess, yeah, it is nothing but the PostgreSQL. Recently I got an opportunity to explore a lot about this PostgreSQL and I'm continuing my exploration. This was really new to me. You know why companies go for options? It is more vital than ever for companies to be able to manage, store, and activate data for modern business operation. The need for modern business operations are endless. They are after insight. We need data. We need to store data. You need to store data for years. We need to identify trends, patterns. So because no single database will be a good match for every project requirement, it is critical to understand the options that will work best for your specific needs, specific use cases. So some of the best SQL options could be SQL Server, Oracle, then of course MySQL, then open source relational database like PostgreSQL. We want to explore more on open source because yes, cost wise they are very beneficial to many companies. And I have seen how companies use open source relational database in these days. So starting with SQL, I'm sure you have some idea about SQL, right? If not, let's just understand what is SQL. Structured query language, or SQL as it is more commonly known, is a programming language used to manage, query, and retrieve data in a relational database. You study about relational database even from colleges, I believe. From schools also we have reference to relational databases nowadays. So it is a standard language used by relational database management system, RDBMS, including PostgreSQL, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle database. So if you know one scripting language, you can manage all this version of SQLs, right? Like PostgreSQL, SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle database. And SQL typically uses commands written in statement format for querying and other database operations. We are familiar with the selling star from table. So it's a commands written in statement format. These statements allow user to manipulate data in relational database tables. So SQL knowledge is an essential skill for many technology roles today. So if you are a data analyst, data engineer, or a backend programmer, SQL knowledge is a must. I have seen people struggling. I have seen people becoming handicapped because they lack knowledge of SQL. So I recommend everybody to start learning SQL, structured query language. It is not difficult. It is very easy. So start your learning of SQL today so that you can manage multiple databases, both proprietary and open source. But remember, you will find there are different variants of SQL depending on the database management system you are using. So if you are working on Oracle, it has a variant for Oracle. If you're using with SQL Server, it has a variant for SQL. If you're using MySQL, that the scripting has a variant for that. So make sure you learn the base, then build on the top of it. So let me summarize. It is a short form of structured query language. It's a programming language used to manage, query, and retrieve data in relational database. So it is a standard language used by relational database management system, including PostgreSQL, SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle database. So now let us dive into more details for PostgreSQL. So we will see what is PostgreSQL, RDBMS with ORDMS, then syntax and language, then PostgreSQL pros and cons. So we'll start with what is PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL is an open source object relational database management system. Object relational database management system. We will see what is relational database and what is object relational in the next slide. So it is released under the PostgreSQL license. It supports both relational SQL and non-relational, that is JSON, and offers advanced SQL functions. Now, it is not only supporting the row column format, it's also allowing you to store files, objects. That's why it is called a object relational database. Then it supports foreign keys, subqueries, and triggers. So it's also highly extensible, allowing you to define data types and generate custom functions. Then it has point-in-time recovery, granular access control, multi-version concurrency, MVCC. Then you have table space. Okay, it supports ACID. What's ACID? Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. It's the characteristics of a good relational database. ACID properties, right? For write, read, write, update operation. Okay, we require these properties. Then, since it is open source, it can run on almost all major operating systems. That's very, very important. Since it is open source, it can run on almost all major operating systems. What else you want? Including Linux, Microsoft, OS X, and Unix. So typically, companies choose PostgreSQL as the main data warehouse or data store to support internet scale web, mobile, and geospatial applications. So what is PostgreSQL? To summarize, it is an open source object relational database. It supports simple and advanced SQL features, including triggers and functions, custom data types, and it is able to work on all operating systems because it is open source. So let's continue. So here we are talking about what is RDBMS and what is ORDMS. So the RDBMS concept, a relational database management system, RDBMS, is based on the relational model of data. And object relational database management is based on the relational model with additional support for object-oriented concepts such as classes, objects, and inheritance. Okay, you understand this, right? I am sure that you have some exposure to C++ language or Java language. There you will study what is class, object, then inheritance, and so on. This particular database totally supports the relational database system. It also supports the classes, objects, and inheritance, and so on. And RDBMS, like SQL Server, is well suited for handling traditional application tasks for data processing and administration, while an ORDMS like PostgreSQL is typically used for applications that contain complex objects. For example, an object relational database management system can handle new data type like video, audio, and image file that RDBMS are not equipped to handle. So that is the catch. So normal RDBMS cannot handle data types like video, audio, and image files. But object relational databases can manage that. And the example for such database is PostgreSQL. Understood? So coming to syntax, I already mentioned that select statement. Everybody knows select this statement, right? How do you write a select statement in SQL Server? Select column 1, column 2 from table. But in PostgreSQL, it is select col 1, col 2. Not much difference. But this, this square bracket may be needed for SQL only when there is a space in the column name. So alias for a column and table, select average of column 1 equal to AVG1. That means what are we doing here? This is SQL Server. We are finding the average. We are finding the average. But here in PostgreSQL, it is a little bit different. Instead of equal, we are using as. Then we have working with the dates. So we have get date path and all. But for this PostgreSQL, it is current date, current time, extract, and so on. So there is a little bit of syntax change. SQL Server and PostgreSQL both use standard SQL query language, but also important that their own version of SQL language, a SQL dialect. So maybe people in one state speaks same language with different dialects, right? Similarly, yeah, SQL Server and PostgreSQL use of SQL, but they are having a little bit of difference here and there. Okay. If you look at closer, like SQL Server uses Transact SQL or T-SQL, which provides all the same functionality of SQL and adds several proprietary programming extensions of Microsoft. But in PostgreSQL, you can use SQL along with its own procedural language, PL/PGSQL, that allows you to create functions, trigger procedures, and add control structure to a SQL. So the syntax also very similar, but little difference. Just remember that. So from a programming language support, there is quite large difference between SQL Server and PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL support Python, PHP, Perl, TCL, Net, C, C++, Delphi, Java, JavaScript, Node.js, and more. But SQL Server is more limited, offering support for Java, JavaScript, Node.js, C++, C++, C#, PHP, Python, and Ruby. So it's limited support. But Postgres has extensive language support also. So now we got some idea about syntax and language. The next, the advantage and disadvantage of PostgreSQL. Highly extensible to add functions, data types, language, and more. Then support for unstructured data type, for example, audio, video, and images. Then MVCC for concurrent processing and high rates of construction without almost no deadlock. Then we have high availability and server failure recovery. Then advanced security features like data encryption, SSL certificate, and advanced authentication method. Then active open source community continually improves and updates the solution. But coming to the disadvantage, the slower performance compared to other RDBs like SQL Server or MySQL. Then stronger focus on compatibility. Speed improvement requires extra work. Then installation can be difficult for beginners. So these are some of the disadvantages. But advantage are a lot more when compared to the disadvantages. Different resources short session, but I would like to introduce you to the PostgreSQL website so that you can take some time and explore more on this relational database, especially because it is an open source. You can find opportunity to use open source and recommend open source. So you need to understand more about these relational database features. So the best place you can go to is PostgreSQL org. You can find downloads, documentation, communities, developers, and support, and things like that. To be precise, if you would like to download and install, you can go to the download center. Of course, it is available for download as ready to use package or installer for various platforms. If you have a Linux OS, Mac OS, Windows OS, BSD, and Solaris, choose the right operating system. As mine is a Windows, okay, it will take you to the Windows installer. Of course, you can see various versions. I think the latest is 16, and of course, you can download from here, right? You can download the installer certified by EDB for all supported Postgres versions. Then let's go to download center. So yes, it is enterpriseedb.com. You can download the right version that is available here. Okay, understood. So this is the download center. I am back. Let me go to the home again. You can go to home. If you wish to understand more about this relational database, you can learn more. It has a beautiful documentation. What is PostgreSQL? Why use it? What are the data types? Data integrity, concurrency performance, reliability, disaster recovery, security, extensibility, then internationalization and text search, and you can make your queries too. So this is a very rich documentation, and you can go through that. Okay, and why the name Postgres? Then if I go back, okay, you can also identify the feature metrics. This tells you about the backend, the data types, indexing, SQL, data definition language, performance, JSON, partition, then backup restore, data integrity, more thing, extension, internationalization, platforms, anything you need, you can go and understand about the data diverse language for each versions. Okay, so this is really helpful if you like to explore. I recommend you explore more about this open source and recommend and try to start developing with PostgreSQL. And there are many enterprise applications like Udos, right? This is an open source ERP and CRM, and I came to know that this open source ERP and CRM platform uses and the PostgreSQL as the backend, right? This is a ERP solution, and this particular solution uses PostgreSQL. Hope this session was useful. I will meet you with a new topic very soon. Until then, bye.